Today, we're going to be taking a look at Robinhood and some of their recent business decisions as a case study in the interconnectivity between business and design. We'll be diving deep into how the two interplay with one another and how they can't be separated. This one should be interesting, so let's get to it. Now, if you take a look at the Robinhood app and you critique it from a design perspective, you'll probably have pretty good things to say. It's got very strong visual design, a very good sense of data visualization, and they found ways to present things to the layman that have just been incomprehensible before. Robinhood has even taken into account accessibility with very high contrast ratios and all kinds of other things to make it easy to use for all. And they've even built up a great brand that has resonated across the industry, making it cool to invest your money in the stock market and talk about it with your friends. Because of all this investment into the design of the application and the brand, Robinhood has become the #1 trading app for millennials that are looking to invest. And they've retained this position over the years even when they've had issues with securities and other problems on their platform. So it sounds like the perfectly designed app, right? So what could be the problem here? Well, pretty much all this goodwill and amazing branding that they've built up over the years has gone straight out the window in just a matter of a few days. Unless you're living under a rock, you've probably figured out what's going on with the stock market right now. Most people have probably heard about what's going on with just the GameStop stock, but there are a number of other stocks that have been limited to restricted buying and selling due to the positions of several hedge funds that have shorted the stock too much. And Robinhood is right in the center of all of this. Ja Rule even came out of hiding from 50 Cent to comment on this.
It's murder!
Now let's begin by diving into the potential reasons why the business might make a decision like this that will lead to the design changes we'll discuss in a minute. From a business perspective, Robinhood had to consider a few things when making this decision. They had to look at their investors and who currently props up their business. They also had to look at their potential IPO, which is held up by the shareholders, and most of those are those same investors. And lastly, they had to take a look at all their smaller customers who are just the normal people that trade on Robinhood like you and me. All three of these factors have been working together harmoniously to skyrocket Robinhood up the ladder, but now one of those legs has fallen. Since Robinhood is a financial brokerage, they need really good relationships with these financial sectors in order to maintain their business. That definitely impacted how they were making the decisions. They had to work with the governments and make sure they were doing what they wanted, and they also had to work with these investment companies and see how those partnerships would work out. Now, it's really difficult to repair relationships with businesses sometimes. So I'm sure they looked at that and they decided to burn the bridge with their smaller customers because they could build that trust again like they did before versus burning a bridge with maybe the SEC or a financial investor that would be almost impossible to repair. Their alignment with Wall Street and not the millennial investors that have taken to their application shone through really heavily in all the choices that they made that then showed up on their website and in their application. Now let's take a look at some of these design choices that were made based on this business decision and see how they were presented to and impacted customers. Unfortunately, I'm sure there were more than a few designers that likely got caught in the crosshairs of this business choice and had to design the UIs to support this decision, even though they went against the user's best interests. For those of you who haven't entered the industry yet or are newer in the industry, this is a valuable lesson to learn. Oftentimes, businesses will choose to make a decision that goes against the customer needs or intents, and designers will be tasked to design something to support this. In this particular case, there were a number of things that the designers had to do that are normally highly avoided by designers. For instance, a common rule of thumb in design is to limit the amount of errors, and when there is an error, make it very clear what the next action a user could take is. This helps avoid making the user feel confused or outwitted by the machine, redirecting the user and sending the user on a path that could resolve the issue. Here's an example of a few of the error screens that were pretty prevalent over the last few days. As you can see in the first example, this error only appears once I try to place an order for AMC shares. Thus, it does not help me prevent the error whatsoever. Luckily, this error was updated to at least explain to me that there was a limit on these number of shares because at first there was no information about what I could do next. Secondly, you get this error that just says something very generic like something went wrong. This was shown a lot during the first day of this event as people tried to trade and the server couldn't handle it. Now, there's not anything particularly wrong with a catch-all error like this, but in this case with so many moving parts, many people took this error to be a way to prevent them from trading altogether. Lastly, one of the worst offenders. This error was being delivered when someone's stock was being sold and they were trying to cancel the transaction. The worst part about this is that many of these trades were being automatically conducted by Robinhood itself and not by the users. Again, this breaks the heuristic that we looked at a minute ago around error prevention and around resolution, because there's nothing that the user can do to prevent this, and this is not their intent. Additionally, another golden rule of design was broken here when all control was taken away from the users and their choices were overridden by the machine. By acting on behalf of the customers and canceling their orders or even selling their shares out from under them, Robinhood lost a lot of trust in just a matter of moments. While automation has become more commonplace as technology has advanced, there's a fine line that designers have to balance between automating everything and leaving some things manual to help the users feel as if they're in control. In this case, the entire point of the Robinhood application is let the people trade. Users come in and normally interact with the interface by buying and selling shares mostly manually, by hiding many other features and placing the emphasis on trading and then just picking between buying and selling. Robinhood has trained their users that the primary actions that they take in this application as a user is to trade or buy and sell. Through repeat use of the UIs, Robinhood has trained customers that they get to make these decisions on their own and that Robinhood won't automate these on their behalf. If we take a closer look at the design elements, you can see that things like limit orders and other automated features are hidden behind these secondary buttons here. And all of these features are really secondary because these are power user features. So most people never use these. So whenever Robinhood or whatever systems they're using acted on behalf of the customers, this fundamentally broke the interaction model of the entire application and undermines everything that you've taught the users in the past. This problem is really exacerbated because of the primary focus of Robinhood's application. Now when users logged in and tried to buy GameStop or AMC or other stocks that were limited and they saw this buy button completely disabled, it broke the experience completely for the user, leaving them feeling as if they had lost all control over their own stock portfolios. Now, one other thing to mention is there's actually several other types of portfolio management tools that automate these things on purpose, but Robinhood is not one of them. So users come here to really be more in control of their transactions. By removing control from the user, they kind of break a fundamental piece of their application. On top of this, this limits the concept of free trade and really undermines the entire value proposition because now the people could only choose to do one thing. Many users were sent very particular messaging around what was limited and why. Robinhood took an angle saying that they were protecting their users due to market volatility. Users had never opted into anything where they asked for protection from Robinhood. Thus, it's very awkward for them to have their shares automatically sold or their positions canceled. Many other applications offer similar things to this, but they're opt-in. I have to opt in to saving protection whenever my debit card is overdrafted. Those kind of things are very common, but they're not things that are on by default. Now, when we look closely at the decisions that Robinhood made, we really see the importance of UX writing and UI text. There's so many things that are being communicated to the user that either come across disingenuously or come across as completely new things that have never been explained, and users don't know what to do with this. We saw a few major user experience flaws with how Robinhood handled this situation, from their messaging all the way down to that final straw of removing user control and automatically selling and canceling users' orders. This is the perfect example of how user experience goes much deeper than just the UIs that are visible on the screen, and how user experience is a core integral piece of the business itself. User experience is something that the entire business is responsible for, and being a human-centered application or product starts with being a human-centered company. Robinhood utilized their branding and user experience as a way to differentiate their product from all the other financial ones on the market. And they really accomplished their goal of making trading easier for almost everyone. But they abandoned this user-centered model when their backs were against the wall for this business decision. At this point in time will tell if this really impacts Robinhood as a business. Though they've grown to be quite a big business over the past few years, it'll be really difficult to maintain their valuation if many of their users are abandoning. I hope that from this analysis, designers and aspiring designers can understand how business choices impact the overall experience and how important it is that we get involved in those choices. Now, I'd really like to get your take on this and what you thought of the design decisions that were made based on these business decisions. Have you ever had to do something similar where you had to design something where the business was just against the customer? Be sure to like, subscribe, and throw your comments down below. I'd really love to hear your take on this one. And that's it for me. I'll see you next time.